All right, welcome to Cajun Connection. I'm your host, John Behrens.
And I'm Joshua Perkins.
All right, why not waste time? Miami, LSU, 33-17.
33-17.
Yes, that's not a delusion. That's a actuality.
Yeah, I mean, and nobody gave LSU a chance in that game. I mean, if you look at College Game Day, everybody said Miami was going to beat LSU. LSU had got too many issues off the field, and this happened. You know, Joe Burrow's first start on the college level. How he's going to handle it? You know, they lost Darius Geis, Leonard Fournette, and etc. And LSU went out there and proved everybody wrong. I mean, everybody.
Joe Burrow, I would say it was like 13 for 22. 140 yards.
Joe Burrow's 11 for 24, 140 yards, but he didn't throw a touchdown though. He didn't throw a touchdown, but most importantly, he didn't throw a pick neither. And what LSU did pretty good on, they didn't have any turnovers.
And then like you said, 2 years ago, Fournette left. Last year, Darius Geis, speedy recovery, please. But Nick Barcett, 25 carries, 125
yards, two touchdowns.
So,
and Nick Barcett really impressed me, and he was a guy who was like a victim of circumstance. I mean, the reason why he didn't get a whole lot of carries and didn't get a whole lot of field time. I mean, you look at everybody who's in front of him, like Leonard Fournette and Darius Geis, and for a short period of time, it was Jeremy Hill.
Let's not forget Darrell Williams.
And so it was hard for guys like Les Miles and Ed Orgeron to incorporate him into the game plan due to the top backs that they had. I mean, almost all the backs were some of the top in the nation. But now Nick Barcett has a shot. This is a brand new start for the offense under the leadership of Steve Ensminger, who back in the final 8 games of 2016 took over the offense for LSU before LSU got Matt Canada. So Nick Barcett, now he finally gets a chance to shine. He gets a chance to spread his wings. And he showed up in a mighty way for the LSU Tigers, running for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's going to be a guy that this LSU offense is going to lean on, and he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to take the pressure off of Joe Burrow as he continues to lead the LSU offense on that field.
I remember seeing a short clip of an interview with Joe Burrow after the game. They asked him if he ever had hesitation or pause. And I remember saying, well, it was right before the game that, or something like this, and I'm not quoting him because I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was like, I sat there on the side, I'm the quarterback for LSU. We're going up against Miami on national television in Arlington. And then that was it. That was about 30 seconds of hesitation where I stopped and thought about the situation, but outside of that, just went out there and played.
I mean, with Joe Burrow, what I liked about him, he was able to manage the game. He still has to there's still significant room for improvement for Joe Burrow at quarterback. Oh, yeah. But I mean, he has 2 years of eligibility. He has this season, and he's coming back next season. And so, I mean, his window is not as narrow as like other quarterbacks, And with Joe Burrow, I was just saying to other people when I was watching the game, I think LSU finally found their quarterback. I think they finally found their ace in the hole with Joe Burrow. His decision making was good. He had a lot of first game jitters, but I feel that we're going to see a lot more production out of him as the season progresses. We're going to see a lot more stats coming out of him as the season progresses. Me as a head coach personally, if I'm a head coach, I don't care if you put up gaudy numbers. As long as you can make smart decisions that can put us in position to win, that's all that matters.
One of the things that was a little bit of concern, if you want to look for a problem with the offense, which had a great performance, was pretty solid. There was a few times when they should have had touchdowns that they came up
right
on.
It was and with Joe Burrow, he had a beautiful pass to one of his receivers that should have been called a touchdown. Honestly. With the LSU offense is their decision making, knowing the Miami front seven, there were some plays that they were questionable. Overall, I was very impressed with the LSU team all around, especially there. I want to put a very special spotlight on their special teams.
We have the kicker now.
We finally have a kicker who can kick bombs, now who can kick dingers.
4 for 4.
Yeah, he goes by the name of Cole Tracy, who came from Assumption, and the total attendance through the 4 years he was at Assumption was 77,000 total over the 4 years, and that night he had a kick in front of over 70,000 people. 4 for 4, including a 54-yard field goal.
They hit the crossbar and bounced in. So just barely enough juice, but
54 yards though, 54
for collegiate, yeah. That's
I mean, the last impressive guy we had who can do that was Colt David, actually, and he was a monster. He had a boot on him.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Colt David, Josh Jasper followed Colt David, I believe. But
and in the words of former Colts punter Pat McAfee, Cole Tracy did it for the brand. For the brand.
Defense came out and performed pretty much kind of like we expected them to. That was a pretty, they had Phillips had that pick six, and honestly, I seen the playback on it. I don't think I've ever seen a pick six being escorted by that many players. Yeah, like 6 guys running into the end zone at one time.
And it just shows that camaraderie, just shows that togetherness that LSU defense has, and it just shows that gang-like mentality that they have. And like this LSU defense has like a gang-like mentality, like a mob personality, and just the way that they were getting on Malik Rozier, being able to attack the run, and just overall as how they performed, especially. And I knew that LSU was going to have this game, especially from the very first series where LSU stoned Miami. And so, I mean, I think it's a sign of good things to come, but the road gets a lot tougher after Southeastern.
Yeah, I mean, Southeastern really almost pulled one over ULM.
34-31, ULM won that game. And, I mean... But still, I wouldn't be worried about the game. This is where LSU can fill up the stats sheet, like I said. But this is where you get to knock off all the cobwebs off your game, because right after they got to head to Auburn and play the Tigers, who they're trying to make a playoff push as well, led by Jared Stidham as their quarterback, and they got Gus Malzahn back on that sideline as head coach.
Yeah, I mean, LSU does rather have a particularly tough schedule,
and after Auburn they got going back home and going against Louisiana Tech, and this is a Louisiana Tech team that they actually think they can beat this LSU team this year.
So do you think Miami might now try to cancel the home and home series that they have with LSU?
I don't think they're going to cancel it. I mean, Mark Richt has coached against LSU before. He's beaten LSU times before. But, I mean, at the time, he was at Georgia. Now he's dealing with, now he has Miami. But, I mean,
Still not where people originally thought they were, I don't think.
But I think this season for LSU, we're going to see how good LSU really is. We're also going to see, how well they can take the challenges. And it's also going to be a preview of how good next year's team is going to be. Due to LSU they got a bona fide recruiting class coming in 2019.
It's going to be a top 5 at least, easily. I think when all said and done, they'll definitely have that top 5 recruiting class coming back to a pretty solid returning core.
And so I see a lot of good things coming out of LSU this season.
I don't think they're going to go 6-6 or anything like that. I think 9 or 10 wins is a realistic goal for LSU this year.
I do see LSU competing with Alabama for the SEC West, but ultimately I do see Alabama taking the West this season again. Well, not I would say again, because Auburn took the West last season in the final game of the regular season in the Iron Bowl. But I do see Alabama, of course, being in talks for a 14 playoff bid, just due to the type of team they had. And, I mean, they blew out Louisville 51-14, but Nick Saban says, well, we still have a lot of improvement to do. We had too many penalties. We gave up too many plays. And, Nick Saban, he's a perfectionist. So, obviously, a guy like Nick Saban, he's going to say that.
So yeah, that was a really near upset by Southern over TCU. Right?
it was only a 48-point loss. That's it. I mean, only 7 possessions. I mean, you gotta look at you score an onside kick and you score again. All right, you know what? Look, he's just being, he's just Southern got demolished. But I mean, what you expect? You're going against TCU. You're going against a Big 12 powerhouse. You're going to get beat. I mean, it's not like Prairie View, almost beating Rice in week 0, in which Rice had to pound the last second field goal to beat Prairie View. But I digress. 55-7 TCU.
Knew we say much?
Not really. I mean, but you gotta look at Southern you look at swag versus Big 12.
It was a complete and total mismatch from the get-go. I don't think anybody expected any type of competition out of that.
Oh, of course. I mean, I wasn't expecting. I knew that, I knew what was gonna come out of it. But I mean, Southern's a good team in their own right. I'm just gonna say that.
They did have Nichols beating
Kansas in overtime, 26-23. I mean,
even though it is Kansas, it's
still you're going against Kansas. An FCS team, but I mean, you just can't give Kansas. Nothing comes easy to the Kansas football team. Now, if we're looking at basketball, Nichols versus Kansas, it would have been a blowout. Kansas would have won, no brainer. Who's going to beat Bill Self unless you're Coach Calipari or your coach Krzyzewski?
Yeah. ULM and Southeastern going to the wire.
34-31, ULM beat Southeastern.
And it came down to, a blocked field goal? Yeah, blocked field goal. It was a blocked field goal that kept it from going to overtime.
And just, I mean, ULM, that should have been a blowout for ULM to do it. But I mean, I don't see ULM really competing in the Sun Belt this season. I mean, I see teams.
No. I think they had that one good year a few years ago, and it just kept the year they beat Auburn, if you remember that.
Talking about ULM?
Yeah.
No, they didn't beat Auburn. They beat Arkansas. You talking about the year they had Colton Browning, and they beat Arkansas in overtime.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. They beat. They lost to Auburn in overtime, and beat Arkansas, and they haven't had a good season since then. Unfortunately,
but honestly, I see Appalachian State taking the Sun Belt this season. I see Appalachian State.
Well, yeah, they just took Penn State into overtime. They came down to Penn State intercepting the pass in the end zone.
I mean, we're talking about Appalachian State, who had to fight their way into the FBS, and so Appalachian State, I see them taking the Sun Belt. Also, ULL.
I mean, they destroyed Grambling.
I mean, but Grambling is actually a ranked FCS team.
They are. I agree with that.
But, I mean, you look at the ULL, you look at the stats. I mean, ULL outgained Grambling. I mean, ULL, they had 556 yards of total offense to Grambling's 306 yards of total offense. It was just basically not a game from the start. I mean, Grambling had a 3-0 lead, first drive of the game, and then after that, we're looking at 35-10 at halftime, 49-17 being the final result.
And then you had Tulane taking Wake Forest into overtime.
Tulane, and I actually watched that game. This was actually the same night Texas A&M destroyed my alma mater, Northwestern State, 52-7. I'm not going to go into that. But I was actually, watching that game as well. And Tulane, they got a pretty good defense. I mean, they were going against Wake Forest, who was led by a true freshman quarterback. And Tulane had a chance to actually win the game in regulation. Defense made, a great stand, forcing a 3-and-out. They got the ball back. They drove a little bit, but they ultimately choked. They went into overtime. And, they got manhandled by Wake Forest in overtime. Tulane took offense first. They had a legal hands to the face 15-yard penalty, which ultimately took their kicker out of field goal range, and it just went downhill. Wake Forest got the ball back, scored a touchdown, and that was the game. But Tulane, I could see them being a very competitive team. Of course, I don't see them really competing with Central Florida nor South Florida, because Central Florida, they opened their season up with conference, and they destroyed UConn 56-17, and Mackenzie Milton looks like he's taking no steps back. And Mackenzie Milton, he's looking like a possible Heisman candidate, in my opinion.
So overall, a solid weekend for Louisiana football.
Unless you're Southern, rambling, or Northwestern State.
Come on, it's TCU.
Yeah, true.
We won't really get a good look at Southern until this weekend, this upcoming game, which Lampley is what they just said today that he's earned a second start for Southern, but it's TCU.
What you expect? I mean, I wouldn't even expect if I was Dawson Jones, I wouldn't expect us to beat TCU. Like, it's basically going to be, look, we're going to see how good we really are. I'm not expecting us to win, but we are getting a good check though.
Right. Okay, moving on to the Saints. Yeah. Trade for Teddy Bridgewater.
We also let go of Jonathan Williams, and we got Mike Gillislee.
Which what the hell? I mean, I don't understand it.
I didn't understand it neither. Now it's just like, basically the Saints right now, they're playing with house money, basically. They signed him to a 1-year deal, so I mean, there's no telling how they're going to use Mike Gillislee on the ground. I mean, you already got Mark Ingram's out for the first 4 games, but right. you also have Alvin Kamara, of course. You got Boston Scott, who
was actually pretty impressive in the preseason.
Exactly. I mean, I thought that was a pretty good pickup.
And he came into the league with a lot of people saying why did Saints pick this? He needs to spend time in the developmental league.
I mean, and honestly, Boston Scott, he reminds me of like a Darren Sproles type guy.
Which is the way some people were comparing him to, was to Darren Sproles, even though he is his own player.
Pretty much. And knowing that they also released Trey Edmonds. They released him.
Really?
Yeah, Edmonds got released.
I thought they were keeping him at fullback.
Well, I heard they had released him.
I had to look into that because I thought they kept him at fullback. But okay. Brandon Tate was kind of a little bit of a shocker. I thought he was pretty much locking up the return position, but no, they got rid of Tate and kept Lewis, who kind of was a little bit inconsistent, but I guess we had to go on previous history.
No, it's hard. No, with the Saints this season, I mean, they're making a lot of acquisitions, a lot of roster moves, and it's just they're playing with a lot of house money, and it's just.
Well, really and truly, going into the preseason, the only team that was open was like third and fourth string positions. Their starters and even most of their backups are pretty much set coming into the preseason.
But I mean, injuries happen, a lot of things happen, releases, trades, and it's like in the NFL as a third and fourth string, you gotta be ready at all times.
Yeah, and they also cut Kikawa.
Which, I mean, you said that was coming. I was surprised because I didn't want them to cut Kikawa because I felt he was pretty good.
I didn't want them to cut him either, but at the same time, they said straight out of the bat that he was going to actually have to earn his spot this time. So I wasn't too surprised. I mean, yeah, it's a little surprising to see someone who's been there for the last 4 years or 3 years.
And they just got cut like that, but that's the nature of the beast. That's the business.
No, what kind of surprised me is they end up cutting 3 of their draft picks.
Which, like, draft picks, those are guys you don't cut. I mean,
Cameron Moore, Natrell Jamerson, and then Rick Leonard. Jamerson and Moore got picked up by other teams. I know the Texans picked up Jamerson off of waivers. Moore, I can't forget. I want to say the Bills.
And it just shows that the Saints are serious by keeping a high standard as far as their, because you look at last season's draft class, probably the best draft class that came through the NFL last season, without a doubt. So they're keeping a very high standard, and it's clear that it shows that they're poised for a run this season.
It was a little bit interesting because the Saints tied the Bills for most players claimed off of waivers. that kind of says something in and of itself. And then the Browns traded for crap. What was that guy's name? Lawrence, Llewellyn.
On defensive line.
Yeah.
I think it's Lavin. Big guy. I mean, he was very impressive against Jacksonville. I mean, he really impressed me before he had to lead the game. But he made the roster.
The Saints traded him to the Browns for a 7th-round draft pick.
I got looking more in these, in all these draft picks and all these moves, because it's like around preseason time. That's when a lot of these front offices are busy constantly. Right. You know, even in off season and preseason.
You know, and then you had the quarterback situation where they traded for Teddy Bridgewater.
Which, honestly, I felt it didn't really make a whole lot of sense, honestly.
You know, it's like J.T. Barrett got cut, but made the practice squad. Taysom Hill was kept on the roster at number 3. I liked overall what I saw from Hill. You can kind of see the potential of where he could play with the Saints offense.
I mean, Taysom Hill, in my opinion, should be a second string because he knows the system a lot better. Teddy Bridgewater has to learn the Saints system. They have to learn the offense. Taysom Hill knows the offense. So if Drew Brees goes down, Taysom Hill will be my first pick to put in there.
Kind of like what I'm going at, though, is that you got these 3 guys that can really run and make plays outside the pocket, or at least potentially. You know, obviously Barrett they cut him for. I don't feel like they really gave him much of a chance to make the team. And then Drew Brees is this elite pocket passer. So it was like, I'm wondering if Sean Payton is looking past the Drew Brees era for a more run option, or...
I mean, I think he's looking to take a different direction, just to basically show the versatility he has as a coach. And like I was saying, what if the Saints run a 2-quarterback system? I mean, you got Taysom Hill, you got Teddy Bridgewater, guys who have experience, like Taysom Hill has experience with your system. Teddy Bridgewater has that veteran leadership he can add to the quarterback core after Drew Brees is gone. So what if they do like a 2-quarterback system, and he wants to, you know, Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill, they're dual threat quarterbacks. They add extra dimensions to an offense led by like guys like Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Ted Ginn if he stays at the time, Boston Scott, Traquan Smith, and so you're adding more dimensions, and it's going to provide a very scary scenario for a lot of opposing defenses.
Yeah. It does look like Peyton plans on staying beyond the Brees era, so that's good. I don't think you don't see coaches stay with the team as long as Sean Payton has, outside of like Bill Belichick
and Marvin Lewis for Cincinnati. He's been there for quite a while.
Yeah, it's because I mean, you look at Marvin Lewis. I mean, he brought success back to the Bengals, but it's like 0-6 in the playoffs.
You look at John Fox and his time with Carolina. You look at Jeff Fisher and his time with Tennessee. And so,
yeah. So I'm excited about the Saints. I really am. A lot of potential there. I'd say if they don't win the Super Bowl this year, definitely next.
Most definitely. I mean, I could see a Super Bowl run coming probably this season. Drew Brees, he's a guy who's been snubbed out of the MVP run for a while. So I mean, I could see him grabbing the MVP before he retires.
I hope so, because he definitely had some seasons where he should have won it, but quarterbacks with lesser stats and lesser success were taken and chosen because of their namesake.
True. And, and next week's show is going to be, we got to have a lot to talk about because NFL season is going to be starting, this Thursday and this weekend, week 1. And so we'll definitely have more. We'll definitely have our notes on what we think about the Saints going forward because we finally get to see the Saints team in real time. Regular season.
The Bucs are obviously going to be without Winston, but at the same time, they still have a pretty formidable defense.
Definitely, especially with guys like with Gerald McCoy, Quan Alexander, Levante David.
Saints and Bucs split split this season series last year.
It was just like the Saints had already sealed their fate. Final game with Tampa Bay, their fate was already sealed. But I mean, I'm gonna see a lot more intensity out of the Saints coming this season. So I'm excited for this season coming up.
Okay, so to kind of take it from football just briefly, we got obviously the Tigers starting up their second season under Will Wade with a team that looks quite a bit different from last year.
I mean, Will Wade has been very busy as far as recruiting, so I see the Tigers being more formidable and possibly competing in the SEC. But the team to beat in the SEC, of course, is Kentucky.
Well, it's always going to be Kentucky. You always have to come in and compete with the Wildcats. That's obvious. They've been one of the best teams in college history.
You look at the guys that come out of Kentucky. I mean, Devin Booker, DeMarcus Cousins, John Wall, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. I mean, Anthony Davis. So it's a long list of people who came out of Kentucky.
And just look at Kentucky. You have to go all the way back to Adolph Rupp.
Yeah.
Who really started the whole thing. He was kind of like the Bear Bryant of basketball.
And you look at, Pat Riley, who used to play in Kentucky. So.
But Pat Riley was on that team that, Texas
Western. Texas
Western made their surprise.
And if you want to know more about that, just watch Glory Road, and you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
But Wade brought in that I want to say it was like a number 2 recruiting class. I know it was top 5. I know it's like and the highlight of that recruiting class was obviously Javonte Smart.
This Tigers team is going to be very competitive, and I could see them probably making the NCAA tournament this season. Will Wade
most definitely. I mean, he brought in at least two 5-star recruits, including I want to say Smart was either number 1 or number 2 in the country.
And what attracts them the most is that they're going to be like part of a very epic rebuilding era for the LSU Tigers basketball. And in LSU, they're a long way from when they had Big Baby Davis and Tasman Mitchell and Garrett Temple. So they're a long way from when they had those guys on their team at the time, and Tyrus Thomas at that. And we're talking about the Tigers team that made the Final Four behind John Brady. But I mean, Will Wade is trying to get the Tigers back to that mode, to that team. And so I see a lot of good things coming out of LSU basketball this season.
And we also have the Pelicans in their follow-up effort from last year's playoff team.
I mean, they also added Julius Randle, Jahlil Okafor, and Alfred Payton as well, who was a former first-round draft pick. And so I could see the Pelicans taking a few steps up. I could see them competing. I would say competing as far as with the Warriors and with the Rockets, but I see them improving a lot this season. They were a 6th seed last season in the playoffs, knocking off the Portland Trail Blazers, sweeping them in the first round. Portland, who was one of the hottest teams going into the playoffs, and get swept by the Pelicans like that. So I see the Pelicans really going forward.
Game against Golden State.
That too. And Golden State, you're looking at probably the best team in the West.
Yeah.
And Houston falling behind them.
They should be a good team, even though it is a bit disappointed that they couldn't re-sign Cousins. But at the same time,
we added 3 young guys. And these guys haven't really reached their prime yet. And Julius Randle was one of the leading guys for LA before they ended up getting Lonzo Ball, and they got LeBron, and they got Kyle Kuzma. But Julius Randle, he gets to be a part of a resurgence of the New Orleans Pelicans behind Alvin Gentry as head coach.
Yeah, I was skeptical of Gentry at first, but he seems to be pulling that team together.
I knew he was going to bring good things to the team, especially his time behind Steve Kerr and being with the Warriors and just taking that intensity and taking those values with him to New Orleans. I knew that he was going to bring good things to the Pelicans franchise.
So, Louisiana is not typically a basketball state, but
but we're getting there.
We're getting there. There's definitely some promise there with the Will Wade and the Tigers. I like what UOL's been doing, making some noise.
Don't be surprised if ULL gets to compete in the Sun Belt. Don't be surprised if you see them really competing with guys like Appalachian State and South Alabama.
They've made the tournament a few times and came real close again last year, only losing, I want to say, the conference final. It was either the final or the semifinals.
Yeah, but ULL, they've always had a decent basketball team, very high scoring, and they competed with LSU pretty well in the NIT last season.
Yeah, that was a testy, feisty game, a little heated.
But we'll have more stuff on basketball, when basketball season gets closer. I'm definitely excited for football. I feel that we're going to have a pretty big season coming up as far as NFL and college. Just make sure y'all keep tuning in every week because we're going to have a lot of stats, upsets, predictions.
Yeah, we also got fall practice coming up for the baseball squad.
And LSU Baseball is a team that I'm very excited about. They got a lot of young guys last season. Considering how young their team was, they were able to make some noise in the postseason as far as making the SEC championship game until losing to Ole Miss. They were able to get into the Corvallis Regional, which I feel was very petty of the committee, considering LSU beating Oregon State in the College World Series the year before last. But I see a lot of good things coming out of this baseball team behind Paul Mainieri, another year at the helm for the Tigers.
Yeah, Tigers were able to actually take 2 games in Oregon. And, of course, Oregon State destroyed them back-to-back times. But
of
very
course.
young team, lost a lot of talent from the 2017 team that
had Kramer Robertson, Greg Dykman. That's just a couple of them to name off.
But coming into this year with 19 pitchers, Mainieri's going to have to make some tough choices.
Who's going to be starting, relieving, bullpen, his rotation.
Not just that, but 19 pitchers, you really can't keep that many guys on your team. There's going to be some good pitchers that are going to end up either transferring or just not making a team. And you got Mainieri has to pick from like 30, position guys. So a lot of talent on this team, a lot of young talent, a lot of good veteran players coming back. I'm actually pretty excited for the 2019 season and see how that team takes shape, which they should be Omaha contenders for certain.
I wouldn't be surprised if they make it to Omaha this season. So I'm very excited for LSU baseball coming. I'm excited for everything. The fall is one of the best times. It's the season to be.
All 3. LSU looks pretty strong going into the season on all 3 major sports.
Yeah, I can see. I see them. Of course, track and field as well. We're not gonna get too far on track and field.
Track and field, they kind of always.
They've always been to Eugene every year. They've always been contenders in the nation. Softball,
you can't forget. Yeah,
Beth Torina.
Torina.
Women's basketball, they always make the NCAA tournament, but they're kind of shaky. They've been kind of shaky under Nikki Vargas, but we're just going to hope for some improvement for women's basketball. So LSU sports is going to be dominating this season. I can see them having a dominant year.
I can definitely agree with that statement. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode of Cajun Connection. You can find us on Twitter at AI Sports 3. I actually have it correct this time. We're on Facebook, AI Sports Network, and AISportsNetwork.com if you want to get it all online on our actual website. And then you can also find us on iTunes. So, yeah, it's been John Behrens.
Joshua Perkins.
Thank you for watching or listening, whichever one you're doing at this point. And
Signing out.
Signing out.